Good evening and welcome to Talking Barrie, the second edition of Talking Barrie, presented by The One Group and theonegroup.ca. I'm Stu Lynham, I'm the marketing director for The One Group, and we're very happy that you've returned and come back to have another conversation with us. Our first Talking Barrie went really well, so we're glad that you're here to join us for the second Talking Barrie. Of course, it is a conversation about Barrie, people in Barrie, ideas about our city, so we're very happy to have you here and take part in the conversation as well. We'll be monitoring our Facebook page during the course of the show, so if you have views, if you have opinions, we want to hear them. So just comment as we go along, and we'll do our best to include you in the conversation. And we're very happy to be joined again by a great panel of guests to talk Barrie. And special congratulations to everybody for making it up the stairs, because it's about a 15-minute hike up here. So we appreciate you coming in. Wendy King, 20 years behind the microphone reporting on Barrie News, now behind the keyboard reporting on news for Barrie Today. Welcome, Wendy.
Thanks for the heads up on the 3 flights.
No problem, anytime. Billy Cordes is the chairman for the Barrie Historical Archive. 3 years now, I think you've...
Yeah, we're into our second year.
Excellent. So you're chronicling Barrie's history through a digital format that everybody can access?
That is correct, Stu.
Excellent. Thank you for coming, Billy. Sorry.
Yep.
Getting confused here. Angela Baldwin, principal for Baldwin Consultants and Development, ambassador for the city of Barrie, and a member of a really vital and new housing project that you're going to tell us a little bit about later on. So thank you for coming, Angela.
No worries. Thank you.
And the guy who made all this possible, team leader and the founder of The One Group, Scott Cooper, and also a terrific local photographer. And you're involved in a very interesting and exciting photography festival that's coming up later on called Focus on Simcoe. Yeah. And you're going to tell us about that later on as well. Excellent. Everybody comfortable?
Yeah.
We're all set? Off we go. First topic, the city of Barrie has a litany of announcements about downtown developments over the last few months. Different projects, different developments coming to the downtown area. There's the Auditorium, the Fisher Auditorium, which is going in the Barrie Central site. There's talk about redeveloping the 5 Points into a condo unit. And there's also talk of a hotel and condo going in down at Clapperton and Mulcaster. All these projects are going to have different formulas, different funding formulas. But I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you could only pick one, what is the one thing that downtown Barrie needs the most? Wendy, we'll start with you.
I would say I'd go with the Auditorium, only because I feel like Barrie could have so much more big stuff coming in. Conferences, big concerts, big sporting events, but we don't really have like a huge stage. Like I know we have the 5 Points Theater, but it's not a very big stage in there, right? Which is great for intimate stuff, but we don't really have, I think we could use more, let's put it that way, of like a big auditorium for cultural stuff. That's where I'd go.
Billy, what do you think?
I guess my heart would have to go with the Auditorium as well, just because being a member of the Historical Archive, we've seen firsthand people's passion for that building, that school, what that archive and what Mr. Fisher meant to the city. So I'd have to select the Auditorium, but I obviously think that any development that's going to drive people downtown is a good one.
Angela, I mean, Barrie, for a city our size, probably one of the only cities our size that doesn't have a hotel downtown. Do you think that's something that we should be looking at as one of the most important developments?
Well, I'm a huge supporter of any development downtown. I mean, being an urban planner into development, anything that can enhance the downtown is something that we should all really carefully consider. I'd love to see a hotel downtown. It's been talked about for years. I think that we miss out on a lot of conferences because we don't have hotel space, and people come to town and say, where's your waterfront hotel? And we have a gem of a waterfront with nowhere to stay on it. So I do think that that'd be pretty great for the city. My heart's with Fisher, though, as well, I have to say, but that's my arts and culture background. I mean, chair of Barrie Film, former chair of Theatre by the Bay. I'm a big art supporter, and I know, Georgian theatre needs, a major overhaul if it's going to stay, and I think this would really handily take its place. Plus, it would be such a hub at the west end of Barrie. It would be a great entrance into the west downtown, and give, the west end a definite boost. It's always been the sort of
redheaded stepchild.
Yeah, not the bridesmaid, not the bride. The love goes in the east end, and the west end needs some love. And I think that is going to be a catalyst for a huge amount of development along Bradford Street. It'll just change that whole side of Barrie so much.
Barrie is growing. Barrie needs houses. Condos, probably the way to go when you think about the size of land and available land. Scott, what do you think?
Well, I think the whole Old Barrie Central site is really exciting times for Barrie. Like, redoing all that space, bringing up a lot of nicer residences into the area, revitalizing some of the homes that are sort of shouldering that whole corridor down there, I think is going to be great for Barrie. People come in on Dunlop Street off the highway and they drive in and that's what they see. Yeah. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be fantastic. And a hotel makes a lot of sense as well. I think the mayor just put out something about on Facebook talking about how the hotels are doing really well in Barrie, but they don't have any extra vacancy. Like, they're always packed, they're always full. So a really nice hotel closer to downtown, maybe a conference space. We could have some motivational speakers, some interesting people come to town. I think it'd be really good for downtown Barrie.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, housing is going to be a need no matter what. But one of the aspects of the proposal for the 5 points is that some of those units would be designated for affordable housing. So if that were the case, would that change any of your views? Would that be the one that you think should get made first?
It's important for sure. Like, there's just not, because Barrie is we have very low vacancy rates, right? And rent is, oh my goodness, it's high. So affordable housing is certainly important. I don't know, I guess it would be good there, yeah.
And timing-wise, I mean, not all of these projects are going to happen at once, but they could all overlap. So you'd be looking at a massive amount of construction and time. So with that coming into it, I mean, should we be going with these projects one at a time, or should we just say it's going to be hell for 5 years and we're going to tear the downtown apart, but when it's done, we're going to have this amazing, Scott, what do you think, have this amazing downtown?
Right. I think it's always best to have a better life sooner than a better life later. So let's get on with it. Like, let's start tearing, let's get going, let's get things built. Let's change downtown Barrie, let's do it sooner than later.
And we've also...
And there's so much, sorry, Stu, there's so much more coming as well. So those are 3, but there are about 20 applications in the downtown core. Like, there's going to be a huge change in the downtown. We've already seen, public meetings for a number of high rises. I think it's great. I mean, the province is designating Barrie as a growth center. We have to take the growth. We have to intensify. It's happening, and it's going to happen in a big way in the next 5-10 years. So I think it's great for the city.
And we've already seen the benefits of it with the lakeshore. I mean, it took 300 years to finish it, but once it's done, it's a beautiful part of our downtown. Yeah. So any kind of development and construction that's going to lead into that, I think, is going to be really welcome. Speaking about housing, Angela, you're part of a new housing development project that's really interesting. Tell us about Redwood Communities and what that means.
Yeah, so Redwood Park Communities, they're basically a group, a nonprofit group that deals with hopeful housing. So what they mean by that is they provide housing at an affordable rate, subsidized rent for people. So their first building was on Toronto Street, and it's a 5-unit apartment complex for primarily women and family that leave the women's shelter. And then they have no affordable housing options, so they provided this accommodation for them. And then there's 2 other projects that we have on the go. One is the Bars Motel renovation, which is across from the Curling Club on Essa Road. Oh, yeah. And so basically taking an old, pretty tired motel from the 50s and revitalizing it to 17 units for the chronically homeless. So people right off the street with addiction issues, etc. So not just housing, but also counseling at the same time. That's the secret, the 2 together. That's what changed people's lives. It's not, the housing is really integral, but the counseling allows them to get a job, to get an education, to really change their lives. And then the other project we have starting up is on Lillian Crescent with a joint venture with the Salvation Army. And that's going to be a 12-unit apartment building. And we're going to house families that right now are living in the motel opposite Fisher Auditorium through a motel voucher program with Salvation Army, and move those families and hopefully others into proper accommodation with their own kitchens and a community space where they can come together and, sort of really thrive. It's a wonderful group, and I tell you, they've flown under the radar for a while, but they're doing some great things in our community.
And how do you find out more? They've got a website. can they volunteer? How do people get involved?
Yeah, definitely. Like right now, we're getting the capital campaign committee going for. We have to raise $3 million for the Lillian Crescent project. So it's a big ask in the community. So we're looking for people to help with special events, people that are willing to help promote. We have podcasts going on right now that tell the story of people that have benefited from living in a Redwood Park unit and how it's transformed their lives. People that have coming from some pretty sad situations, moving into full-time jobs, proper housing, and transformation.
Excellent. So we'll put the links to all the websites and organizations that we're going to talk about here in the comments below. So that's excellent, Angela. Thank you very much. I know nobody wants to think about winter because we just wrapped up winter 10 minutes ago, but if I could ask you to think about winter for another moment. Aurelia hosted the Ontario Winter Games this year. According to all the organizers and the mayor, these were the most successful winter games ever. I guess every time anybody hosts something like that, they always say that. However, according to them, it brought upwards of $300,000 to the local hospitality sector and upwards of $6 million into the region. Scott, we'll start with you. Should Barrie be looking at doing more of these types of events? Winter Games, Paralympic Games, maybe? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not, right? And with all the developments going on downtown, we're going to have more hotels and conference spaces and everything to house this type of stuff. We've got the lake. There's all kinds of great sports we can do on the lake in those winter games, right? Ski hills are nearby. Like, there's no reason why Barrie couldn't be doing something like that and trying to bring in more international and more sports into the community, winter sports.
Billy, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but has Barrie hosted, an Olympic game? Well, not Olympic Games, obviously, but have they hosted anything similar like this in the past?
You know what? That is putting me on the spot, Stu. And it's unfortunate.
Well, the host is supposed to know, and the host doesn't know. So
what I can tell you is that I've seen, looking back at I've gone through a lot of family photo albums, and I've seen the great joy that comes when we host events like this that just bring people together as a community. And I know that an event like this, leave the financial implications aside, I know that the cultural significance it would have, I think would outweigh that, and I think if it brings upon any sort of financial success to the city, then so be it. But I think that more so, having an event like that to really meet your neighbor and go out and see local athletes, and I think Barrie's newest model, Well Played, reflects our ability to host a winter games. I think that it's the perfect place to engage in sport activity. So
Wendy, cost is always something to consider. This brought in a lot of money to the region, but you got to put out a lot of money, and I would caution everybody to say that Montreal hosted an Olympic Games in pre-biblical times, and they're still paying for it. So is that should we be put off by that, or do you think invest and it comes back?
I think you got to put it out there. You got to spend money to make money. Is that the old saying? And Hardwood Hills, didn't they used to host some of the cycling events? It would have been summer games, but I remember them being a venue for stuff like that. And I always thought that was exciting because it's like something different. We have like this venue right here. So you've always got to figure out the cost, right? But it would do so much, like publicity-wise, right? I always thought Barrie should have I know we have Kempen Fest and we have a lot of things, but we need one big thing to build our reputation around,
For sure. And Angela, it should be noted that the City of Barrie did co-host some of the events, although a lot of us were saying we weren't really aware that Barrie was getting involved. So maybe taking the lead instead of co-hosting, or do you think co-hosting is more of the route to go?
I think Barrie should take the lead. What I love is these are young athletes aged 12 to 22 is what I checked into, and also Paralympic and disabled athletes as well. So anytime we can profile young athletes and encourage young kids to go into sport, we should be supporting that all day long because, there's a senior games that seems to be well attended and I think lots of people participate, but we need young people. We need to support them in sports. I think we really do. And I'm with Wendy in terms of, a lot of our tourism is for things that are outside the city boundary. It'd be really great to have, we have some great arts and cultural events, but to also have a sporting event that is within our city boundary. Now, of course, some things are going to be outside Horseshoe Valley for the downhill, Hardwood for cross country, but they had a lot of indoor sports as well. So it was a really nice mix, actually, of events.
Scott, from a real estate perspective, if this involved building more? Is that something, oh, wait a minute, we're already building enough, or, is building and getting those buildings to be reused later on the road, is that something we should be looking at too?
I think it would, again, put more pressure on the need for hotels. I don't know if it's necessarily going to build houses, because people, if they come in for the games and they're gone, what are we going to do with these extra homes? So for residential homes, I don't think it's going to make... Well, maybe there could be a good combination there. I didn't think of that one. But I think, to your other comment when you were talking about finance, I think Barrie's underestimated for the amount of wealth that's actually here and the amount of incredible, long-standing businesses that would get behind something like this.
And you know what? Not to interrupt, but I think that Barrie's proven time after time that we can sustain growth, and the people of Barrie are very used to growth and adaptable. And I think that any event that provides growth is sometimes a painful experience. But I think if you look at Barrie now, reflect on what it was, you can see tangible evidence of growth, and you see tangible evidence of the kind of the happiness and the pride in the city that came with that growth. So I think that any event that provides any sort of growth, whether it be infrastructure or recreational facilities, Barrie can sustain it.
Excellent. And this would be a perfect opportunity for the Barrie Historical Archive to collect some material, right? If we hosted something along those lines. Tell us about the Historical Archive, what you guys are doing, what you're excited about.
Well, it's funny that we're talking about the Winter Games, because I think images that we have of the Winter Carnival are actually some of my favorite that are in the archive. But for those that don't know, the Barrie Historical Archive is a not-for-profit organization. We exist to centralize and celebrate Barrie's historical content in a free, credible online archive. And to this point, nothing like this existed, and we really felt the need. To be honest, it started out of a Facebook group. It started out of interest in social media in digging up these old photos. But we realized, and I think people are definitely starting to realize now, that social media is not necessarily always a safe space. It's not always a space that it might not be a space that's sustainable. And if you want to
except Facebook Live, which is great.
Good point. But I think that people's trust in social media only goes so far. But their trust in people that live and breathe and work and volunteer in their city is much greater. And that's the sort of people that volunteer for the Barrie Historical Archive. And I think we do a great job of taking people's memories, taking some things that are far beyond people's memories, and making them accessible to everyone. Whereas these things once only existed in museum walls and in deep in archive drawers. So
excellent. And how can people get involved? Just go to the website, or
visit barriearchive.ca or email info@barriearchive.ca. Please follow us on social media and get in touch with us. We're looking for contributors both in time. We're looking obviously for volunteers to help build our archive, but also to help promote and participate in some of the events that we use to draw people to the archive and to increase knowledge of the archive. And we're also looking for any contributors to historical content on the archive, so people don't realize that they have kind of treasure troves of great images, documents from way back when that are actually very important to others. And I think we've seen that over time. And please email or visit our website to get involved.
Excellent. So there was a lot of discussion, I guess, about a couple of historic buildings, a cluster of historic buildings that were just torn down a couple of weeks ago, right here, just up the street from us at Bayfield in Sophia. These were buildings that were not included in the city's Heritage Registry, which is a program that protects these sorts of buildings. But it brought up, a big question about whether or not in Barrie we are doing enough to sort of protect historic structures. Scott, we'll start with you. Should we be doing more in these kinds of situations, or is it, they own, private people own it and it's all up for them?
You're absolutely right, Stu. Like, it seems like every other week we're taking a piece of history in Barrie and we're tearing it down and we're building something new on the grounds. And so that space over there on Sophia is a great example. How many times did we drive down Dunlop Street and see those buildings? Yeah. The one with the really cool turret on it and stuff. Yeah, Shame that it was torn down. I think it could have been, rebuilt into something great. I just hope they put something up really useful and great in its place, because I think it's too soon to be tearing it down. And they're doing something else right now too at the corner Owen and Collier. They got all scaffolding up and stuff. So we're trying to make sure that the archive is taking pictures of these things because they're going to be history.
Yeah.
For sure.
Sad.
It is. Angela, the owners are a not-for-profit board, and there's been no announcement about what is going to go in its place, but there is some thought that it might be affordable housing. Again, we're talking about housing. If it's affordable housing that comes in there, does that lessen the sting, or is it still we should be doing a little bit more?
Look, I mean, Barrie needs a huge amount of affordable housing. I'm a big supporter of that. What I'd like to see, though, I think that in a number of urban communities, they do the facade. So they keep the facade of the historic building, and then they build behind. So you have sort of a modern structure mixed with a historic feature on the outside that Toronto and New York, you see it all over. And that's actually a really cool way to preserve the historic facade of the building at least and still have your modern structure behind. So you still get the economics of the space, which you need, which the developers want, and I get that. But you preserve some of the history. And I think that's a good way we can do it if it's not on the registry.
I was going to say that too. We were talking earlier, Scott, and I said, could they not do like a vintage looking, which is exactly what you're saying, a vintage looking exterior, but modern behind,
you can absolutely
or whatever.
do that.
Yeah.
The Prince of Wales School is a good example of a building that they're actually currently preserving the facade and demolishing much of the building, but it's really the facade that was determined to be.
There's a cool structure like that down in Windsor too, near the university, I think, where they've kept a really old brick wall instead of completely demolishing it, and they've left the windows wide open, and you look through it, and it's a courtyard, and the inside where the students can sit outside, and so they're keeping the old brick and mortar and just cleaning it up, tidying up, making sure it's safe, and then building modern in behind.
They do that really well in Guelph. I was just in Guelph on the weekend, and they have a lot of old sort of factories that were right by the river, and they've kept the facade and they're building condos, but some of them are condos within those old sort of manufacturing, like shirt factories or whatever they were. Kitchener's another great example. I went to school at Waterloo, and we had a lot of old buildings like that. And it's very cool because people want that kind of lifestyle to live in, and they'll pay a little extra for an urban loft space like that has this really cool exterior. So I think there's lots of opportunities because I think we've got the demographics here that can support it.
Now, what about the environmental concern? Because a lot of these older buildings are really energy guzzlers, and there's a concern about green energy for all housing. If it comes down to it, and this building, no matter how historic it is, it just can't be converted. Do you think, Billy, that's it? That's sort of the litmus test, assuming that it's not protected by like a registry or something?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to determine the reasons without examining each individual case. I think that each building that's come down, has varying reasons for coming down. But it's actually interesting that we talked about this. Last night I was at a stakeholders meeting hosted by Heritage Barrie, in which the city of Barrie was present and discussed some of the implications of that particular building coming down. And what was evident in our conversations there is simply that if there's something to be done, it's really not at the point where a building is going to be demolished. It's finding the volunteer resources, finding people in our city that are going to advocate,
get interested in it, to get excited.
Right,
about
they're going to advocate for the heritage, the outstanding heritage that's in our city, long before these buildings come down, and advocate for the municipal registry, advocate for the designations, and that's what they have in some other cities like Guelph, like London, and we need more people, like-minded people. That are participating in those conversations online once the building's coming down. We need them to participate in promoting the heritage long before that.
In advance.
So that the owners of these buildings maybe respect the heritage or at least can kind of see both sides of the coin.
Like the church over, remember where we did the
Central United,
Central United,
yeah.
Shame.
It is a shame, right? But in the end, there's nothing that can be done at that point, right? But
too late.
The steps have to be taken long before then. And it really is. It's kind of a culture change. We need people in Barrie to advocate for heritage long before the buildings come down.
Wendy King, Barrie Today, barrietoday.com, did a great job of covering those stories and all the other stories that Billy was just talking about. You're behind the keyboard. You're reporting for Barrie Today. Tell us about Barrie Today and what's going on with you guys.
Well, I got to say I'm really grateful right now. I'm just freelancing for them, so I do a blog every week called Everything King, and it's just about anything goofy and ridiculous that happens in my life, and people are like, you can't make this stuff up, it actually happened. And then other than that, I'll go and cover stuff, like you guys are giving me all kinds of ideas, like I'll be calling you all tomorrow to bug you as the pesky reporter that I am. But I'm really grateful to them because they've given me a voice after radio to kind of still do stories and get the messaging out. And my thing with that is I'm passionate about local news, and I, much like people don't appreciate old buildings, they don't appreciate local news as much as I feel they should. I think you need to know what's going on in your community, and just a one-size-fits-all approach to news, I don't think that's the way to go, but clearly I don't run the place. But
for now.
For now, yeah. But Barrie today is trying to do that, so they're launching all these different sites. So there's Collingwood, there's Aurelia, they just launched Bradford today. So that's, right in your community. It's your stories, it's your reporters, people that live there, that care about it and want to do the stories. And so I'm super grateful to them for giving me another chance in media.
Excellent. I expect a plug next week. No,
Okay.
Just kidding. 3 minutes left, so we get quick answers in the lightning round. Innisfil just completed a trial with Uber as a substitute for public transit. They say it saved them about $8 million. So, Scott, should we ditch buses and start building apps?
I think it's this interruption of all these different industries, right? Like we've seen it in the hotel industry, the taxi industry. I think it's coming for the real estate industry. It already has in certain aspects. Why shouldn't it happen for public transit too? Like, it would take a lot of cost off the city of Barrie. Potentially, they could save a lot of money, and if our transit could get more efficient, and why wouldn't we look at options like that?
Angela, you okay with an Uber driver instead of a subway?
Look, I'd rather take the subway because I'm a big supporter of urban transit. I mean, as planners, that's what we're supposed to be supporting, and we do, because it moves high volumes of people, at any given time. The economics are tough because transit is a huge money loser, if you will. I mean, it just can't subsidize itself, but it has to be provided because it's so necessary in the community. So that's a tough one.
Wendy, Uber, bus. One answer.
Neither.
Billy?
Your own car.
It's a tough one, but transit has to be accessible, so I have to advocate for public transit. But.
Okay. A movie about Rob Ford is being made in Toronto. It's being filmed right now, actually, with Damian Lewis from Billionaires in Homeland. He's putting prosthetics because he doesn't look anything like Rob Mayer. But if a movie was to be made about Mayor Jeff Lehman and his tenure here, who do you think should play him? Wendy King.
Okay, you got to be super tall. So Vince Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn, good. Billy.
In case the mayor is listening, I chose Ryan Gosling.
Oh, then I can say Ryan Reynolds then. Okay, he's taller. But I was thinking a taller version of Kevin Bacon because he's got the hair from Footloose.
Scott.
That's right.
I'm with Wendy
That's
on
not
Vince
bad,
Vaughn,
right?
like totally Vince Vaughn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Justin Trudeau's an actor. Can't help it. Great to see a lot of music fans go to support Record Day last Sunday before, especially heading down to BJ Records, which is just around the corner, and it's Barrie's own vinyl store. Time for you to confess. What's one album that you're sorry, but not really sorry, embarrassed Stone, Billy?
It has to be Third Eye Blind's self-titled debut.
It's not that bad. Scott?
I got a Jethro Tull record.
Not too bad, Angela.
Okay, Phil Collins' Face Value, that was actually a really great album when that came out. I mean, he's not the cutting edge now, but back then, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, he wasn't cutting edge back then either. Sorry, Wendy.
I want credit for going this long without saying the word Elvis Presley. Because he was the king.
He was
Yes.
the king. Scott Cooper, Focus on Simcoe is coming next month. This is the first time it's come to Barrie. It's a photography festival. You're the director. Tell us about it.
So Toronto has one called Contact, and Peterborough has one called Spark, and they've been really, really effective at driving culture in the city and bringing out photography and arts in the city. So I sit on a board with 3 other people, and we're bringing Barrie's first photography festival to Barrie. We're partnered with the city of Barrie, and they're giving us Barrie or June as the photography month. We're having a flag raising at City Hall, and we've got about 20 exhibitors happening at local businesses in downtown Barrie. Kicks off on June 1st at the Five Points Theatre with the Barrie Historical Archive being the featured exhibit. And you can go to focusonsimcoe.com to learn more about the exhibits, and we're still looking for sponsors. So if you want to get behind the event, we would love to take your money.
Excellent stuff. Guys, that's Talking Barrie. That's been 30 minutes. Thank you to Scott Cooper from the One Group and Focus on Simcoe, Angela Baldwin from Baldwin Developments and Consultants, Wendy King from Barrie Today, Billy Cordes from the Barrie Historical Archive. Thank you all for being here. Thank you as well for commenting and joining. A lot of great comments and a lot of you taking part in Talking Barrie again. So we appreciate you coming, and we'll see you next time on the next edition of Talking Barrie. Just watch this space for an announcement. Cheers.